Hello there friends and welcome! For today's Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader Guide we have at long last an updated Argenta build, everyone's favorite sister of battle. With this guide your Argenta will become a true burst goddess, capable of firing more than 40 times per burst attack, for the ultimate damage possible, higher than 500 per each bullet fired in a burst shot, which of course can be even as high as 20,000 plus damage, even higher than before, despite all the nerfs burst attacks got since release. As a matter of fact, your damage is so high that most of your burst attacks will actually miss the enemy, not by virtue of low skills but rather because they'll be dead, before most of the burst shots actually hit them. And as if that was not enough, your Argenta will also excel at single target shots for multiple attacks per turn, including with sniper rifles, amazing for the early game, all on unfair mode of course. So without further ado, let us get into our Argenta Burst and Sniper Goddess build.
Strike is a prayer.
Argenta comes the earliest at level 3, with both of the very powerful soldier abilities Run and Gun, which lets you get 1 extra attack at -1 AP per turn, and also more movement, with the downside of a -10 penalty to ballistic skill, and a cooldown until the end of the next turn. However, through Revel in Slaughter, you can actually refresh the cooldown and get more bonuses, such as increases to ballistic skill, this one will stack with itself, and also to critical damage and critical hit chance, based on your agility. But I'll cover how to use them in depth in the how to play section. Anyways, for level 4, we'll get your Soldier Heroic Action Firearm Mastery, which is absolutely busted when combined with burst weapons later, because the higher your rate of fire with your weapon, the more free attacks this will provide you. Later we are looking at 10 plus. And it even makes it so that the first hit against any new enemy is an automatic critical. Now for our first soldier talent that we can pick at level 4, be sure to go for Unpredictable. This will highly increase your critical hit chance, which is amazing early game. It's based on your agility bonus, and even gets doubled against enemies that you are protected by cover at the moment of the attack. With this talent, even at chapter 1, your Argenta with let's say sniper rifles can have around 40 to 50% critical hit chance, even without being buffed by an officer, which of course increases it even further. Then for level 5, start increasing your ballistic skill. The higher your ballistics, the more to hit chance your character will get for a maximum of 95%, and every increase above that will be directly fed into your critical hit chance. Then for the second soldier talent, Swift Slaughter. This makes it so that your Revel in Slaughter ability can be used after just 2 enemy kills instead of 3. Great because like I said, Revel in Slaughter has multiple nice bonuses and also refreshes the cooldown of Run and Gun for 1 extra attack. And even early, it's very easy for Argenta to kill 2 enemies in just 1 turn. After that, more ballistic skill, and for our first soldier power at level 6. I recommend you go with Dash, it can add a lot of extra mobility, great for getting line of sight against a target you wanna snipe. Because here's the thing, early on, for chapter 1 at least, and I think I already covered this in both of my previous Argenta builds, you really don't wanna go with burst weapons, they are just very underwhelming, especially for unfair mode. If you use burst weapons in Act 1, you'll end up missing most of your attacks not only by virtue of lower to hit chance, but also because of high recoil, which also causes your attacks to miss against the selected target. Sniper rifles however are godly Act 1 for unfair, because the best early game gun is the long laser sniper rifle, which will highly increase your critical chance and also to hit chance. For a very fun time, even early game on unfair. Now, after maxing ballistic skill, go for agility as it has a lot of synergy with some soldier abilities like Run and Gun and Revel in Slaughter, plus higher initiative and dodge for Argenta. For the first generic talent, my preferred pick is Stronger Together. All of your party members besides Argenta herself will get a +5 to their agility. Great because once again agility is tied to initiative and dodge, and early game during Act 1, you don't really have ways of forcing initiative as you always act before enemies, so this can help. If however you only have a single soldier party member in your main active party, you can also go with Doing My Part, which reduces the cost of the first soldier ability she uses in combat by -1. Something else you can pick at this point is Laser Weapon Expert to reduce enemies' dodge against laser weapons, and once again the best weapon early is a laser sniper rifle. It's just that because from Act 2 onwards we are mostly using burst, this will kinda become useless. You can always respec out of it if you want, or like I said, just go for Stronger Together, which will always be useful. Followed by another soldier talent at level 8, and this time what you want is Camaraderie. This is one of the easiest ways of getting percentage bonuses to damage, because it's applied per each nearby ally, and based on your ballistic skill bonus, which is very easy to buff to an officer ally. Since Argenta will be sniping at chapter 1, it's very easy to have her start with some allies near her, so long as you're all behind cover. And as far as later chapter 2+, because some of your allies will always act first, you can also start outside of cover with everyone clumped together, as you won't be at any risk of taking damage. Now for skills, increase her demolition. She's meant to be the best character with demolition in the game, and there are a lot of traps in every single map area. For the first Soldier Firearm Mastery Heroic Action upgrade, my preferred pick is the first one. It will increase your movement and also prevent your sniper shots or burst attacks later from blocking you from moving. Amazing overall, so you can always have line of sight against enemies that are even far away. Like I said, there's not much of a point into picking the second upgrade for higher rate of fire early. We'll be picking this soon enough anyways. Now, for another soldier talent, my preferred pick is Fired Up. Whenever you deal damage, you will increase your critical damage by +1%, stacking. Great because you'll have a lot of attacks with your Argenta soon enough. Plus, of course, amazing synergy with Firearm Mastery that automatically sets each attack against a new enemy to a critical hit, followed by more agility. And for the second soldier power, well, now it's time for rapid fire, because we can't really pick another one until much later, and you are soon reaching Act 2 anyways. Once you max demolition, go for awareness. It does help you detect traps, the very same ones you disarm through demolition, plus there's a lot of hidden items in this game. Then at the next level, be sure to increase strength. You do need a +5 to strength to properly wield the heavy burst weapons we are soon picking at chapter 2+. Then for a generic talent, you have two options here. Bolt Weapon Expert in preparation for the Heavy Bolter we'll be getting at the next chapter for maximum bursting, or It Will Not Die for higher HP. It's just that, well, nowadays with my builds, chances are you won't really be getting hit outside of the first boss of the game. So I don't think It Will Not Die is that necessary for Argenta, because there's a lot of generic talents she wants early. Which is why I prefer Bolt Weapon Expert now. For the last soldier talent until exemplar levels, you also have two options. My preferred pick is Muzzle Velocity. This will make it so the first shot fired in a burst attack will deal extra additional damage equal to your rate of fire, which of course soon enough will be 20+. It does matter because it's treated as a source of flat damage, which means very soon, because of all of the percentage modifiers you'll get to damage that are added on top of this, you can hit for a lot in just the very first burst shot. Plus of course there's all the remaining shots that will be fired after. But it helps to maximize burst damage as high as possible. Anyways, besides that, you can also go for Unfaltering Fire, which will remove the penalty from rapid fire, that is -20% less damage. I don't think it's necessary because look, your Argenta will soon have such high bonuses as percentage to extra damage that a -25% means nothing when you have what, 800% plus. I'd much rather Muzzle Velocity. Of course you can also ignore, let's say, Fired Up and pick Unfaltering Fire if you really must have it. I'd rather delay it for later. Then for another generic talent, go for Litany of Hatred. This will make it so Argenta's unique War Hymn ability from her background will add extra damage to single shot attacks as a flat damage source. Great because you'll fire a lot of single shots through Firearm Mastery, and even if the damage might seem low, you'll soon have a lot of extra percentage modifiers, and the higher the base damage sources, the better the end result will be. Plus willpower for Argenta is very easy to buff through allies like Officer or Cassia, if you follow my build for her anyways. But you can ignore this if you want, and like I said, pick It Will Not Die. For another generic talent, it's at long last time to pick Heavy Weapon Proficiency. When combined with the +5 strength we picked, Argenta will be able to equip all of the heavy burst weapons we want, which of course will soon become available right at the second chapter, and you're very close to that at this level. Followed by more awareness, and for the last upgrade to Firearm Mastery, the increased rate of fire of course, because we'll soon be getting OP burst weapons. Now, as far as your second archetype for Argenta, my preferred pick nowadays is Master Tactician by far. Because honestly, if you want to achieve the maximum burst damage possible after all the nerfs since release, it is a much better option than, let's say, Arc Militant or Bounty Hunter, which I've already covered in my previous 2 builds for her anyway, so you can just follow that if you want to use these other classes. Burst attacks can still benefit from the highly powerful Press the Advantage feature from Master Tactician. This alone can increase your burst damage by 400%. Which is great, because unlike something like Muzzle Velocity that only increases the damage of the first bullet fired in a burst attack, Press the Advantage works for every single one of your bullets in a burst. So when you're hitting 40 times plus, every single bullet will get a 400% bonus. By itself it's already godly. But of course, later we'll combine it with even the nerfed Inspire, so by just going Master Tactician, your Argenta will get a powerful Alpha Burst Strike with higher than 800% damage. We're talking about 1000 plus even. This is how you'll overcome the nerfs since release and hit for a godly 10,000, 20,000 plus even. So Master Tactician is here to stay. Plus, it also has other amazing benefits, such as generating higher momentum for party members, which is of course godly for more heroic action spammage. And as far as the first Master Tactician power, Fervor Always, and I'll explain how to use it in the How to Play section, but essentially it's one of the easiest ways of generating stacks of tactical advantage, your most powerful resource for higher damage and more powerful buffs as Master Tactician, without having to kill enemies. As far as the first Master Tactician talent, go with Nerves of Steel. Whenever you get momentum, you'll gain +1 more. This is for both Argenta and all allies. Whenever you lose momentum, you'll lose -1 less. Godly because you know you're always generating momentum, such as at the start of each party member's turn, also whenever killing an enemy, and lastly, through the aid of the Witch Collector talent, which comes from Colony Management, whenever an ally casts a Psyker or Navigator power. When all of this is combined, Nerves of Steel will highly increase your rate of heroic action spammage. Speaking about heroic actions, Argenta as a Master Tactician will get Orchestrated Firestorm, which is also very good. You can choose a 3x3 square zone on the battlefield, and all allies, including Argenta, capable of a ranged attack, it can also be a spell, will immediately attack the enemy for free. Even works for Cassia's OP Lidless Stare power. For the first stat upgrade at level 20, return to Ballistic Skill. We want as high to hit and critical chance as possible. Then more Ballistic Skill. Something you can pick now is Personal Involvement, which increases your resolve by +1 for every enemy killed. Amazing when combined with Nerves of Steel and how many enemies you're hitting per burst attack. But I'd rather delay this for later and go for Stacking the Deck. This will highly increase Argenta's critical damage, +1% stacking for every stack of tactical advantage spent. And eventually you'll get, 100 plus stacks, so that's a lot of extra damage, especially since we already have the fired up Soldier talent for a similar but much bigger benefit. Both will stack anyways. Then for the second Soldier talent, it's all about Inspire now. Inspire is another way of increasing your damage as percentage, even if once again it has been nerfed since release, but it is still a must-have for the highest damage possible. Of course, if you'd rather have higher resolve, you can go for Linchpin instead. But for my Argenta build, unlike my Psyker God build, who can deal damage the higher your resolve, Argenta, well, resolve will only serve to increase your momentum, but you have, Nerves of Steel for that, and also other party members, plus the Soldier Firearm Mastery for lots of attacks anyways. I'd much rather get Inspire now for as high burst damage as early as possible. Then for the next level, unwavering motivation to increase the power of your Inspire, followed by a return to demolition increases. Then more agility, just like with soldier levels. For another generic talent, at long last we can pick the ones that increase the power of your heavy weapons, because by now you already have the godly heavy bolter. For maximum bursting, so first, breaking point. Your heavy weapons will not only deal +1 flat damage, very precious for a burst weapon user, also more percentage damage, and most importantly, ignore 2 points of enemy deflection. Enemy deflection is their main defense against your burst attacks, because as far as armor percentage, you know characters like my Cassian Pascal build can melt the enemy's armor. Deflection is a lot more difficult to handle, however, so this can help. For the level 25 talent, my preferred pick is Joint Offensive, which grants you +1 stack of tactical advantage for every hit enemy. And of course, Argenta has loss of attacks for multiple hits per turn, to either burst or her firearm mastery heroic action. You can, however, also go for personal involvement for +1 resolve per enemy killed. You'll have space for both, it's just the order that you prefer them. Then more demolition, followed by more agility once you max ballistics. For the first upgrade to your heroic action, the best one is the second one early. This will let you activate it multiple times per combat, once per turn, but the best part, and what it doesn't say here, is that you can actually combine it in the very same turn with your soldier heroic action for even more attacks. After that, well, you might as well go for personal involvement now. Then more awareness increases, and back to perception after that. For another generic talent, we want more heavy weapon power through overpower. This will increase both the critical chance and critical damage of heavy weapons. Meanwhile, for another master tactician power, linchpin to increase resolve. By the way, you can actually activate both Inspire and linchpin on fellow party members as well if you want to buff them instead of Argenta herself. After that, since we just got linchpin, you might as well boost it through the reliance talent, so that the cost will be reduced to 1/4 your tactical advantage stacks. Great, because you know, the more tactical advantage, the more damage you're getting, and more powerful buffs. Then more perception, followed by more awareness. After that, you have two options: against all odds, which will enhance your starter stacks of tactical advantage equal to the amount of enemies in battle. It can help since you're always fighting 15+ enemies, it's just that Argenta has a very easy way of getting lots of tactical advantage by virtue of burst attacks. At this point, my preferred pick is Support the Advance. Whenever you start Argenta's turn with higher than 125 momentum, the first burst attack will cost -1 last action point. The main reason I delayed for now is because, well, before that, while you will generate loss of momentum with Argenta, it's only during her turn, not exactly at the start of it. It's just that by now you have so many ways of getting momentum that you can proc this reliably. But you can also delay it for later, well, pretty soon anyways, and go for Against All Odds instead. Then more perception, and your last generic talent can actually be anything. For example, characteristic training, ballistic skill, or you can even increase your hit points at this point. Through, of course, It Will Not Die. Just pick what you prefer. As far as the last upgrade to your heroic action, the third one, so it also lets you use a burst attack for free against all enemies in the area. Now let us cover exemplar progression, and as always, there's a lot of powerful stuff here, including the best one for burst damage, Extermination. For every attack Argenta makes, you'll get +1 flat bonus to damage, which of course is godly, considering how many attacks you have and the fact every single increase to your burst base damage through a flat source will mean loads and loads and loads of extra damage per burst attack, per shot, when you consider how high your percentage modifiers are, and they will be applied on top of that. Followed by another soldier talent, well, at this point you might as well pick Unfaltering Fire since you have the space for it. Then more demolition, followed by Against All Odds or Support the Advance as I mentioned before. Then more ballistic skill. Well, you kinda run out of great generic talents to pick now, so might as well go for characteristic training, and ballistic skill, or agility, depending on what you picked before. The last soldier talent can be whatever, because you'll never be using it, might as well pick controlled shot. Concentrated fire nowadays will no longer work with burst attacks. It's only for area attacks, which are more like psyker spells and also flamer weapon hits. Then more demolition, followed by pinpoint accuracy. This will highly reduce the enemy's deflection, which is godly for burst, by an amount that's tied to your ballistic skill bonus, very easy to buff through an officer ally. Amazing because once again the less their deflection, and some of the most powerful targets have a lot of deflection, the easier it is to annihilate them with a single burst attack. After that you might as well go for hidden advantage. It's a minor benefit, but can result in more powerful damage and buffs. Then more ballistic skill, and the rapid reload talent. This will essentially reduce the cost of your first reload to 0, because we have gear to enhance it, for 0 anyways. It can help because at this point your best burst weapon doesn't really have that high ammo capacity for how many shots it can fire per burst attack. And well, anything else for another Master Tactician power, because they don't really matter, might as well pick Strong Point. Followed by more agility, and Dawn of Victory. The benefit doesn't matter that much because it's limited per turn, and at this point you have more than enough momentum gains, but, well, the more the better. Then go for characteristic training and perception, followed by more awareness, and the Cataclysm talent for even higher damage, plus 3% stacking for every new enemy you hit. After that you might as well go for integrity for higher ballistic skill and movement points at full wounds. Then more awareness. After that, well, you kinda ran out of the best soldier talents to pick anyways. Might as well pick enough bullets for everyone, even if it's kinda limited and has a minor benefit only. Once you max awareness and demolition, you can kinda increase whatever because the remaining skills don't really matter that much. You might as well go for Medicate because Argenta can use medikits. Then go for Brink of Death, another minor benefit only, but you have the space for it now. Followed by more agility, and more perception after that. Then more Medicate. And, as another exemplar talent, as you already have the best ones for damage, something fun you can do is pick Shot Through. This will add an enormous amount of extra over-penetration to your attacks, which is great because, you know, your heavy bolter attacks can over-penetrate enemies as you hit them multiple times through either burst or your Soldier Firearm Mastery extra attacks. Then you might as well grab Wreck and Ruin, even if the benefit is rather limited. Followed by Heroic Inspiration, not really that good, but you don't have anything else. Then more Medicate, and the second skin talent. And honestly, at this point, since you already have the best generic talents, you might as well go for Hit Will Not Die, for higher HP, even if it doesn't matter that much. Or whatever else you want. Including, for example, Swift Movements for higher movement, or a skill increase of choice. Ideally, awareness at this point. I'll just go for It Will Not Die. I do like having high HP. Whatever other power now, it doesn't matter at all. I realize I picked Concentrated Fire by mistake. It was kinda meant to be Controlled Shot. Anyways, it doesn't matter because you won't be using any. But yeah, Controlled Shot is definitely better for this build than Concentrated Fire. Then more Perception, and for the last exemplar talent, Critical Velocity can provide a minor benefit considering you can increase your dodge very high through buffs. There's always Perfection under fire for +5 to all stats, but something fun since we picked Shot Through is Masterful Display. Whenever your single shots deal damage to targets other than the main target, which of course will happen when you have such high over-penetration, you'll get +5 ballistic skill. And whatever else for the last talent. For fun, we might as well grab No Heresy for higher critical hit chance and armor against Xenos and Demons. This is mostly for flavor though. And that's it. Now let's cover how to play as our Argenta during the early levels, especially Act 1. And well, it's pretty simple. You'll be going with the long laser sniper rifle, of course, and ideally you wanna first go for a Deadeye shot because it has higher range and higher 2-hit chance, so higher critical chance as well. On the weaker targets first, ideally enemies that will most likely be one-shot by your attack. As you can see, we have 95% chance against most enemies besides the ones behind cover, despite not being buffed by an officer ally at all. And you always want to focus on ranged enemies first because, you know, the melee ones, they have to move to your characters to attack them. Anyways, either targets that will most likely be one-shot by your attacks, or enemies that are gonna act before one of your characters. For example, this Rebel Gunner here, since the other two enemies before our officer are melee, but he's behind cover, so we might as well miss. Therefore, I'd rather focus on this one here first. And we just got a tasty critical for 41 damage. With, you know, 59% critical hit chance, even without being buffed, that's pretty good. And I almost forgot to say it, but be sure to start behind cover, of course, for more defenses early. And the fact we do have the unpredictable talent for higher critical chance behind cover. After that, go for run and gun to refresh your attack at minus 1 AP cost. And well, Deadeye shot again. And now we might as well go for the other two gunner enemies here, who are gonna act before some of our party members. And you'll most likely be one shot as well. All on unfair mode, of course. There we go. This time we didn't get a critical, because we had lower chance as the enemy was far away, and we do have the penalty from run and gun, that is minus 10 to ballistic skill. But this was without being buffed, of course. With an officer, it's gonna be even better. Don't forget, after you attack enemies, ideally new enemies, activate Argenta's Furious Recital power for some free momentum generated. It's higher the more targets you attacked during this turn, and also based on her real power, which is very easy to buff later. Anyways, if you have an officer, then of course, Voice of Command followed by Air of Authority really helps. And bring it down for an extra turn to Argenta. Under this extra turn, chances are you'll only be able to attack with a single shot, because you only have 2 action points. Later you'll have more, however, during Act 2+. Anyways, since we're only going to attack once, you can already go for Deadeye shot again on, let's say, this gunner enemy here, because you'll act right after us, and you'll be one shot, or just go for a normal single shot. But notice we have much lower to hit chance with just the single shot. 83% instead of 93. Well, it's only 10%, but you know, in games like this it feels like if you don't have 95% you're always missing, if you know what I mean. You could potentially already activate Revel and Slaughter for some bonuses and go for the single shot instead, which will kinda even it out with Deadeye shot, so let's see how it goes. Especially because it's gonna remove the winded penalty from run and gun. So Revel and Slaughter, and we can now use single shot. So we also have 93% chance even without Deadeye shot. Let's kill the enemy here. There we go, another critical hit. We had 46%, pretty decent since it was very far away. Now let's cover how to play during the second chapter, but first the beginning of it, so around level 20, because you know, by then you'll already have your heavy bolter, but your burst attacks won't really be at full maximum power yet. Now I like having Argenta start ahead of some other party members. I've already explained why Pascal is at the middle to provide extra turns. Just check my updated build for him. Anyways, this way you can target most enemies with a burst, with Cassie to the side so she can also use her lidless stare power. Even if you're tanking with Abelard, he can just move to enemies afterwards. We are gonna buff our Argenta with our officer, which is another reason why it doesn't matter if you start outside of cover, because you know, by this point, you'll have characters, multiple party members even, that will always act before all the enemies, to set you up. So first, Voice of Command, Word of the Emperor, Air of Authority. This is my Officer Psyker build I just released. Then bring it down for an extra turn to Argenta, but since she has high agility, she will act before most enemies usually. Still, it helps to grant her an extra turn, especially for burst attacks. Oh, before that, front line on the enemies, and back line on your allies, for synergy with Pascal's Fire at Will talent for less AP costs on range attacks. So we already have the Fire at Will effect. The thing is, it only really comes on your actual turn, not really extra turns, I think. Which is why our burst attacks will cost 2 AP, but you know, that's why our officer has the Medal of Alacrity, so an extra turn will provide Argenta with 3 action points, enough for the burst shot. In any case, this extra turn doesn't have to go to Argenta necessarily. It can be, let's say, my Pyro, Psyker God build, even Cassia. But since you have the points, you can already burst enemies. It's just that it won't really do high damage because you won't be buffed with some of your Master Tactician abilities yet. Although you can already activate Fervor. It will cost some HP, but that doesn't matter.
Faith without deeds
And
is
go for
worthless.
Press the Advantage for some higher
The
damage.
Emperor commands, I act.
Obviously, you won't have enough AP for Rapid Fire yet. It's kinda why I like having Pascal act first, because you could already buff us with that. But in this case, our officer went first. Anyways, let's just do a burst to soften the enemies. It won't really kill anyone, because these enemies all have very high HP on Unfair for this point in the game.
Doubt it.
But the whole point is that we hit a lot of enemies, which means once we trigger Furious Recital, we'll get a lot of momentum. There we go, almost close to full momentum. Then we pass.
Rejoice in service.
Nice cast, as she can already soften enemies up. She doesn't have any buffing spells yet, because we are only at level 21. But anyways, Point of Curiosity, very important, so enemies get close together for your burst attacks. The second one anyways. Waking Nightmare to debuff their HP.
Me? If you insist, Lord Captain.
Lidless Stare, because it's only gonna cost 1 AP due to Fire at Will. And we'll already soften enemies up, of course. And she'll even have enough AP remaining for a Bring It Down on another ally if needed, which of course can reduce the enemy's HP even further. Let's do Bring It Down on our Pyro God Psyker build, so he can buff Argenta. And anyways, you're already at high momentum now, which is great for Argenta's turn. So let's go for Word of the Emperor.
I will triumph.
You could of course also cast Firestorm, which would reduce the enemy's hit points even further, but I want to save most of the damage for our Argenta burst build. Now, once you pass your Cassia, because of high momentum, she can dump Finest Hour on Argenta, which is gonna be godly.
I'll paint your death in colors.
Since you won't have an attack limit during this turn. And our powerful buffs will only cost 0 AP, so we can trigger Rapid Fire for free.
Faith without deeds is worthless.
Then go for Fervor again. Ash should go for Press the
As the Emperor
Advantage.
commands,
And unleash a very powerful burst attack.
I'll do this. None can escape the Emperor's
Much
judgment.
stronger than the last, because we already killed some enemies and are at high momentum, plus we can activate Run and Gun and remove the penalty, plus get more benefits to Revel and Slaughter, all at 0 AP because Officer's Finest Hour.
Faith without deeds is worthless.
Now you can just activate Firearm Mastery, which is
I
amazing,
am his will
because you'll have a lot
manifest.
of attacks
As the
for
Emperor,
free.
you, my Emperor, this is why
All
I was chosen.
at 100 hit chance despite what it says here,
For you, my Emperor.
because we do have the Blasted Bolter Casing item for 100 hit chance with single shots for bolter weapons.
As the Emperor, I'll do it.
And you know,
Each strike
because
is
of
a
how easy it
prayer.
is to kill enemies with these attacks, you'll be at high momentum already. One more time anyways, which is great for other allies. Plus you can even burst this character down again, because now Argenta is under the Fire at Will effect from Pascal. So it only costs 2 AP.
Faith without
Even if they survive, you know, you still have more attacks from Firearm Mastery.
eradicated.
Now, before finishing this section, let's just cover how to play with our Argenta at, let's say, the middle part of Chapter 2+, because by then you'll have a lot more powerful abilities, and this is when Burst really starts to become godly. So at the start of battle, I have characters that always act first to buff Argenta and debuff the enemies, of course. For Pascal, let's grant an extra turn through Missionary Oath, as already explained in my updated build for him.
Binary override.
Our Psycho Officer can just start the buffing train, which of course will also increase our momentum constantly,
The Emperor commands.
with loads of extra momentum, right? +2 per cast. All because we have dual Master Tacticians, my Psyker Blaster God and Argenta now. Let's drop Air of Authority on Cassia now, who's gonna act afterwards.
I will not be deterred.
Buff Argenta with Inspire from my Pyroblaster.
Purpose guides me.
Pascal can go Expose Weakness on one of the turrets here, because they have very high armor. Drop the front line and backline. Now, Cassia will buff, first with Mend Reality for party-wide infusion benefits, then reveal the light on Cassia, and we are already at high momentum. You don't necessarily have to use this now, however, because I want to debuff the enemies first. The most important one is Waking Nightmare on the turrets here, because like I said, they have very high armor and deflection. The biggest defenses against burst attacks. But with this, they have way less now because it is tied to their toughness score, which Cassia just reduced. You can also go for a Lidless Stare that will only cost 1 AP, but that's gonna kill some enemies. I want Argenta to do that instead. But what can I say, it's what happens when your builds and party are so stacked. Point of Curiosity though always helps for dragging enemies close together, so they become more viable targets of a burst. So we don't even need to do Finest Hour on Argenta. Let's wait for our Officer for that. Now is our Officer Psyker's turn. He can of course buff and buff and buff again.
Rejoice in service.
Especially Voice of Command and Air of Authority on
Louder
Argenta,
than words.
who now already has enormous amounts of extra stats. Oh, something fun is to bring it down on Pascal, because I didn't get to use
In service.
Machine Spirit Communion by virtue of using Missionary Oath for the extra turn. But this means less recoil for Argenta, so be sure to hit her with it. Also some exploits for enemies. Might as well hit the ones at the back here.
The Omniscient knows all. Comprehend.
And Joint Analysis, which is godly of course. Plus another exposed weakness if needed. Now it's time for Finest Hour on Dear Argenta.
May my wrath be thy undoing.
And well, the buffing can go even further. It's the same logic as my Pyro God Blaster build. First, Linchpin because it costs the least in tactical advantage,
Doubt is for
then
the
Inspire, then
weak. As the
Fervor and
Emperor
repeat.
commands, I act.
You can also activate Rapid Fire because it's free under Officer's Finest Hour. And since you're very close to high momentum, you might as well activate Furious Recital, which doesn't cost anything, although it is only once per battle. This will grant you loads of extra momentum, especially if there's nearby enemies or based on how many enemies you hit during that turn. We gotta move to burst them anyways,
Enemies of the
so it's
Emperor,
gonna cap
be
out.
undone.
There we go, now we can activate Firearm Mastery for higher rate of fire,
I stand
and lots of free attacks.
brave.
Actually, you can even kill some of the enemies at the back here first,
I'll do it. Each strike.
just to generate more tactical advantage since the attacks will be free anyways.
None can escape the Emperor's judgment.
Plus more momentum of course, and you can go for Run and Gun and Revenant Slaughter for free as well.
Eradicated.
So we are at high momentum already, and you can even go for Orchestrated Firestorm if you want. Because we do have the ability that lets you cast it once per turn, even after already using another heroic action. Anyways, let's just increase our tactical advantage as high as we can before
I'll do it. Each
gunning
strike is
down
a
the enemies
prayer.
here with a burst attack.
As none can escape the Emperor's judgment. Eradicated.
This is more than enough. I mean, higher than 100 is great. So now it is time for Press the Advantage, followed by your deadly OP burst at full maximum power. 100 plus per shot.
Each cleanse.
And there we go, annihilated. Lots and lots of damage. You actually have more bursts remaining, and even some free attacks left. I mean, you can just burst again.
Faith eradicated.
The turret kinda exploded already. That's how good muzzle velocity is, because the extra damage it adds is so high that when you multiply it by all the broken stuff you have, it really adds up. So just the first burst shot can be deadly already. Let's do an Orchestrated Firestorm on the turret here.
I am his will made manifest.
And exploded already, with the help of our party members' attacks. During Argenta's turn, of course. There are still some enemies remaining, only 4. And, you still have attacks remaining. Plus, you get to move and attack as much times as you want.
As none can escape the Emperor's judgment.
Remember, you can always use dash to move, so long as it's not directly on top of an enemy, because you won't be able to attack with ranged weapons. But, you know, only 2 enemies left.
Doubt is eradicated.
Only 1 enemy left, actually. All during Argenta's turn, because our other party members didn't really do anything offenses-wise. So like I said, it gets way better at the middle part of Act 2+. Now let's cover gear for our Argenta Burst Goddess build first with Chapter 1 options. I might as well start with the weapon because, as I mentioned before, sniper rifles are godly during Act 1, ideally the long laser rifle, which can be found very early in the same area you recruit Cassia. The base damage is great, most importantly it boasts enormous additional hit chance and dodge reduction. What this means is, even on unfair during the early game, even without being buffed by an officer ally, your Argenta will have pretty decent hit chance against enemies. Which does matter because, you know, in my previous Argenta guide I got some complaints about low hit chance, and I cannot see that happening at all if you're going with the long laser rifle early. Especially because its dead-eye shot, as I explained before in the how to play section, even increases hit chance further. Now, if you want to burst, you might as well go for another laser gun, the modified las gun, which has decent enough rate of fire for somewhat decent recoil, but most importantly dodge reduction and decent base damage. This way you have both, but honestly I'd rather keep it to the long laser rifle. How do you even pronounce it anyways? Is it like long las, as in jazz from laser? I don't know. Anyways, for cloaks we have the camouflage robe, so that your ranged attacks will decrease the enemy's dodge. It doesn't stack, but you know, your sniper rifle already has amazing dodge reduction, but the more the better. Also the hypnotizing pendant to slow enemies after hitting them with your sniper shots. The sniper gloves for a nice bonus to both damage and critical hit chance to single shots and dead-eye shots. For the helmet we have the tactical goggles for higher hit chance and critical hit chance, or the face of the Sovereign, which is great if Argenta is your only character capable of damage early on, or at least the best one. As for armor we have the Sin Skin for nice enough armor percentage and a nice bonus to dodge by virtue of having higher than 40 agility. Oh, and don't forget there's also the Metronome. This should go in whatever character you want to have the highest damage. Now let us cover Act 2+ options, and as always there's a lot of very powerful upgrades here, especially because this is when burst weapons become godly, starting with your main burst weapon of choice, the Heavy Bolter, which is why we picked all of those heavy weapon feats. You can buy it from the Drusians faction at pretty low reputation, so can be found very early in Act 2 yet. It has decent enough rate of fire, nice armor penetration, and great damage, and will be your best friend until Act 4 even. Besides that, for weapons, I also like keeping a sniper rifle as a backup option, just in case the enemy is very far away or maybe you don't have that high to hit chance against them. Anyways, it helps for versatility. And for that we have the Deadly Repeater, which can be bought from the Explorators faction. It's basically the long laser rifle, but way better, right? Way higher base damage, almost double. And the amazing property of 30% chance of gaining 1 extra attack after killing the enemy. But you can actually keep to the Heavy Bolter for most of the game with this build if you prefer. Speaking about burst, there's a lot of gear that enhances burst weapons. First, the Tactical Backpack, bought from the Fellowship of the Void faction, to increase your rate of fire by +1. Followed by the Recoil Gloves, found at Janus, to reduce the recoil of all weapons by 50%. Great because, you know, if the recoil is high, you ain't hitting the target with most shots. For boots, you can either go with Sororitas boots, which actually fits Argenta. This will raise momentum to very high after killing 5 enemies in a row in 1 turn. Very easy because of her burst weapons and her firearm mastery heroic action. But my preferred pick, I have it on my main character here, is the Caligay of St. Keith. Because whenever you perform a heroic action, and Argenta can do 2 of them in just the first turn, she'll get +2 AP and recover all wounds. Mostly for the extra AP, because since we didn't go with Arc Militant for the Heavy Gunner talent, our burst attacks will cost higher. Anyways, for talismans, we want the Portative Manipulator to reduce weapon reload costs, followed by the Target's Designator to immediately reduce the enemy's deflection whenever using Deadeye Shot, great for combining with a deadly burst attack later. Most importantly, and this is the best talisman for a bolter-focused burst build, the Blast Bolter Casing. This makes it so that single attacks with bolter weapons will automatically hit the target. It's actually quite good because, by default, your 2-hit chance is capped at 95%, so you still have 5% chance of missing. Which, if you've been playing a lot of games like Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder with a lot of dice rolling, you just know it will happen a lot. Blast Bolter, however, sets it to 100%, no matter if the enemy is behind cover or whatever, it always hits them. Great because of how many attacks you have under your Firearm Mastery heroic action, because of how high your rate of fire is. This is found very early at one of the very starter planets, even during the second chapter. You don't even need to fight an enemy, you just click on it and get the Blast Bolter Casing for free. This is another reason why I didn't get people saying they were missing a lot with my Argenta build, because for Act 1 you have the Long Laser Rifle, and for Act 2+ you have the Blast Bolter Casing. It's 100% hit chance. For burst attacks, officer buffs of course. Then for armor, the Death World Origin Enforcer Light Carapace, for a very nice +10 agility, also high armor percentage. For helmet you have a few options, such as the Gunslinger Helmet, which increases the damage of your ranged attacks by a percentage based on your rate of fire, which of course will be very high during battle. But since Argenta will be a master tactician with this build, there's always the Peripheral Visor for loads of extra resolve whenever you pay costs in tactical advantage. Now lastly, for another weapon, you can also go with the Calibrated Heavy Stubber, which has way higher base rate of fire than the Heavy Bolter, but even less than half the damage potential. Still, it can be great. It's just that usually I don't get this during Act 2 yet because it requires Casbelica Mission Faction Reputation, and that takes a long time to get unless you really min-max it. So for me, this weapon is Act 4+, but by then I have a better option. Now let us cover Act 3+ options for gear. The biggest upgrade here is of course in weapons, because it's when you can finally buy the improved Heavy Bolter from the Fellowship of the Void faction. It's just like the normal Heavy Bolter, but much better because of higher base damage and the fact each kill with the weapon will increase its rate of fire by +1. Which means you can easily get higher than 40 shots with this weapon alone, even 50. Especially good when combined with Argenta's Firearm Mastery, so you'll start killing enemies with single shots as to increase your rate of fire and later go for a deadly burst. Honestly, the rate of fire can become so high during combat that it will definitely be much better than the Calibrated Heavy Stubber, despite a much higher starter rate of fire. Besides that, I would just keep, to the Heavy Stubber if you want for more ammo, or the Deadly Repeater as mentioned before for a sniper rifle option. Another nice upgrade is armor-wise, because Chapter 4 is when Argenta can get her special power armor, and she doesn't need proficiency to equip that. There's dual variants, this is actually the weaker one, but it depends on the choices you pick for Argenta. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Honestly, it's mostly here for fashion because I really wanted Argenta to have her special, unique gear. But yeah, the weakest benefit is that after using a heroic action, she'll immediately cast War Hymn for free, which is nice for more momentum instantly generated. Not that necessary, however, but it does look very cool. Another tremendous upgrade is the Compensator Gloves, which also comes from the Fellowship of the Void, I believe. Anyways, it's quite busted. First, you can completely ignore recoil when performing burst attacks, which by itself is godly. But the second benefit is also absolutely busted, as it will increase the rate of fire of your weapons by an equal amount based on your ballistic skill divided by 2, which of course is hilariously high at this point, due to all of the buffs you can stack from either Cassia or an officer ally, plus from level ups. And as far as the other gear, it's mostly the same options as before. Well, alright friends, so this was it for our updated Argenta the Sister of Battle build. If you found this guide useful as always, please remember to like, subscribe and also consider becoming a channel member if you can. I really appreciate your support. Thank you for watching and see you next time, friends.